banners of the Galactic Empire hung heavy in the sky like storm clouds, metallic and oppressive, each one fluttering with mechanical precision above the crumbling skyline of New Geneva. Where once human flags had waved with wild, imperfect grace, now only sterile symbols marked the rule of a power that saw no poetry in conquest, only process. Sergeant Corrin stood at attention as the Viceroy's hovercraft settled onto the cracked marble plaza. Dust stirred beneath its weightless landing, blinding the onlookers briefly, but the silence remained absolute. The Empire preferred it that way. Noise meant defiance. Breath itself was rationed in the presence of power. General Rain watched from the shadows beneath the broken arch of the old museum entrance. She had no uniform anymore, only a battered coat and a scarf too soaked with soot to be called white. Her eyes didn't blink as the ramp of the ship descended. Her hand brushed the grip of her weapon beneath the folds of fabric. She didn't reach for it. Not yet. The Viceroy emerged tall, draped in golden robes too elaborate for someone with no battles to their name. He wore his medals like costume jewelry, their weight doing nothing to steady the tremble in his fingers. Around him, shock troopers in gleaming black armor stood in angular symmetry, but they were guards for show. The true defense was the belief that resistance had already been extinguished. The Empire had declared humanity broken, a species archived. That's what Rain was here to correct. Her eyes shifted to the boy standing beside her. Dev was barely 16, skin tight across his cheekbones, eyes too wide for someone who'd already killed a man. His knuckles were white on the old field transmitter they'd salvaged from the deep vaults beneath the city. "Wait," she whispered, as his finger hovered over the activator. "Not yet." The Viceroy raised his hands, his voice echoing with the aid of sonic projectors. "Citizens of Earth," he began, with the affected grandeur of someone used to silence in return. "The last phase of integration is complete. You are now officially a client world of the 13th Galactic Sector. Your heritage, culture, and what fragments remain of your governance will be preserved in the Imperial Archive for posterity. You should take pride in your contribution to galactic order." Rain exhaled slowly, watching the crowd. No one moved. No one screamed. That was the Empire's greatest weapon, silence born not of peace, but of exhaustion. Then, just behind the Viceroy's platform, something flickered, a low crackle of blue light, like a hologram misfiring. The projector mounted to the plaza's north pylon jittered, blinked, and abruptly changed its feed. Instead of the Empire's symbol, a face appeared. Hers. Not the haggard version watching from the shadows, but the one from 4 years ago, the last day she wore her general's stripes. Blood on her cheek, fire in her eyes. The footage was from the Battle of Mare Tranquillitatis, recorded from a helmet cam before it went dark. "Humanity is not defeated," the image said, voice sharp and defiant. "It's cornered, and cornered things fight." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Viceroy whirled around, barking orders, but the message had already triggered the others. Screens, walls, abandoned terminals. Every scrap of tech in range lit up with the same face, the same voice. "The Empire calls this peace, but it is the peace of the grave, the silence of a world buried alive." "Now," Rain said. Dev triggered the charge beneath the pylon. The ground buckled with a concussive roar, smoke spilling in waves over the square. Chaos detonated in the crowd. The guards scrambled, weapons raised, but they fired at ghosts. Rain was already moving, boots pounding across the broken stone, shouting commands into her mic. The resistance squads emerged from the surrounding ruins. Shadows with blades, old rifles, explosive darts, hitting fast and hard. They weren't here to win a battle, just to send a message that Earth still had teeth. The Viceroy was gone before she reached the stage, evacuated by drone, no doubt. Coward, she thought, but his absence didn't matter. What mattered was the sight of humans rising, of Empire soldiers falling back, panicked and uncertain for the first time in years. She stood atop the ruins of the monument they'd torn down, the statue of Admiral Carson, and shouted into her mic, letting her voice bleed across the open frequencies. To the occupied, to the forgotten, To every world that lost its name under imperial rule. Hear us now. Humanity is not done. She paused, knowing the line mattered. Then she said it. You forgot rule number 1. The silence after was not from fear, but from realization. And then, in the distance, another explosion echoed. One she hadn't planned. Somewhere, another cell had joined in. Good, she thought. Let the fire spread. The fires hadn't stopped burning since Rain's broadcast. In the days that followed, resistance signals flared across Earth like lightning striking dry forests. Garrisons once thought unshakable began to crack. Not because of firepower, but because the illusion of control had been broken. Civilians who had bowed in silence now passed messages, weapons, rumors. The dream of victory no longer seemed delusional, it felt inevitable. Rain stood over a dusty star chart projected across the long table in the bunker's war room. The makeshift command center, deep beneath the old subway tunnels, smelled of oil, sweat, and ozone. Bare bulbs buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the concrete walls. The room was cramped, patched together with salvaged tech and scavenged imperial gear. Her officers leaned in around her, some military, some insurgents, most somewhere in between. They're not adapting, said Lieutenant Voss, ex-UN Space Fleet, eyes sharp behind a cracked retinal HUD. They're used to overwhelming force, not this. They never trained for insurgency. They never needed to, Rain replied. Her fingers moved across the display, highlighting supply routes, relay stations, and vulnerable nodes. When you crush enough civilizations, you start thinking you're immune to entropy. Voss smirked. Then let's be entropy. Dev entered from the corridor, breathless. Grease smudged across his jaw. It's done. We got the signal to piggyback across their intrafleet mesh. You're sure it'll work? Tested it twice. The AI you woke up? It did the hard part. All I did was weld a few wires. Rain nodded. The AI, once a Black Ops system codenamed Ghostfire, had been sealed in the deepest vault beneath New Geneva's Defense Command. The Empire had missed it in their purge. Its voice now echoed softly from a jury-rigged emitter in the corner of the room, calm and toneless. Ready for upload. Target, orbital logistics array. Probability of detection, 41%. Do it, Rain said. The AI's lights pulsed once. Somewhere in the upper atmosphere, an Empire satellite blinked and went dark. Moments later, sirens began wailing across the city. They were too slow. Across 3 districts, fuel depots ignited in near-perfect synchronization. Fire coiled into the night sky like divine wrath. The resistance teams melted away before the smoke cleared, leaving behind only their mark. A single letter seared into every burnt-out wall. Voss grinned. We're in their heads now. No, Rain said. We're in their systems. And we're just getting started. But victory wasn't without cost. 2 nights later, while inspecting a forward cell in the ruins of Paris Sector 6, Rain stumbled upon the aftermath of an Empire crackdown. She found bodies, a dozen of them, strung up along the frame of what had once been a cathedral. The message was clear. Defiance would be met with spectacle. Among the dead was Mila, the cell's commander. A poet before the war, a killer after. Her eyes had been gouged, and her hands broken. Even in death, she looked unbowed. Dev stood beside her grave, fists clenched. We should burn something. Make them feel it. Rain crouched beside the body, resting a hand on the folded arms. No, she said softly. We don't react. We choose when and where. She stood, eyes already turning north. We take the UN spire. Voss looked at her as if she'd gone mad. That place is a fortress. The Empire turned it into a shrine. All the better. They think it's sacred ground. Let's remind them it's still ours. Planning the assault took days. Timing had to be flawless. The Empire's forces were thinnest during the orbital transfer cycle, when reinforcements rotated off-world. Rain's AI intercepted their schedules, mapping windows of vulnerability down to the minute. They struck at dawn. The resistance emerged from the tunnels beneath the spire, 100 soldiers in patchwork armor and scavenged weapons, moving like phantoms. Explosives crippled the perimeter towers before the guards even roused. The entrance hall became a kill box. Drones fell from the sky like dying birds. The Empire had expected sabotage, bombs, graffiti, disruption. They hadn't expected a full assault. At the peak of the spire, past marble corridors turned into war zones. Rain found the Empire's shrine, an obsidian throne room lined with banners stitched from stolen Earth flags. She didn't hesitate. With a single word, she ordered the room purged. Every symbol burned, every relic shattered, and in the silence after, she mounted the throne and broadcast again. This time live, across all channels. She didn't shout. Her voice was steady, cold. To the Empire, your monuments mean nothing. Your banners will burn. Your silence ends here. She let that sit before delivering the words the galaxy was already repeating. You forgot rule number 1. That night, riots broke out in 5 occupied worlds. On the moon of Corellos, slaves broke their chains and armed themselves with mining lasers. On Vega Prime, a prison barge vanished, later found abandoned with every inmate freed. On the Empire's capital planet, reports of unrest were buried under controlled media, but whispers still escaped. Rain sat in the hollowed spire's command chamber, her wounds freshly dressed, exhaustion lining her face. The cost had been high, 28 dead, over 50 wounded, but Earth had a symbol again. Place. Voss approached her, a tablet in hand. You should see this, he said, flipping the display. It showed a message intercepted from a distant sector, origin unknown, but repeating the same broadcast Rain had sent. Different voice, different language, same words. Rain leaned back, eyes half-lidded, as if listening to a storm approaching from the far horizon. It's spreading, she said. Dev entered quietly behind her, the shadows of firelight playing across his young face. They think you're a myth now. Good, Rain said, closing her eyes for a moment. Myths are hard to kill. From deep space, the Empire's response had not yet come. But it would. She knew it in her bones. The silence wasn't retreat. It was the drawing of breath before a scream. She would be ready for it. And next time, it wouldn't be Earth they struck. The stars outside the bridge viewport burned cold and indifferent, ancient witnesses to the empires that had risen and fallen before. General Rain stood at the edge of that transparent wall, her reflection superimposed on constellations she no longer remembered by name. Earth had become a war cry, but the war had grown far beyond it. She was aboard the Aegis Revenant, a warship stolen from the Empire during the Battle of Io's Rings. Its frame still bore scars from that night, gouges where the Resistance's gravity mines had torn through plating, scorch marks from plasma flak. But the ship lived, and now it was hers. Below the command deck, her crew was preparing for the impossible. Ghostfire's voice filled the bridge like a whisper in a cathedral. Imperial Dreadnought Thessaline is on final approach. Estimated time to intercept, 29 minutes. Weapon systems primed. Rain turned. Broadcast to all Allied frequencies. A soft beep. This is General Rain of the United Resistance, she said, voice low but unwavering. The Empire believes it can silence us with a single ship. Let this be their education. Let them learn what happens when you corner those who refuse to kneel. She ended the message and turned to Voss, who now bore the rank of commander, his uniform patched but clean. They'll have kill beams, drone clouds, AI suppression nets. The Revenant wasn't built to survive that kind of fight. Voss gave a crooked smile. Neither were we, but we did. Below decks, the crew worked in silence. Engineers, many of them teenagers who'd never seen peace, ran diagnostics over jury-rigged reactors. Pilots calibrated stolen fighters, their eyes hollow but eager. Dev sat in the neural cradle of the signal splicer, fingers trembling as he adjusted the pulse array that would give them one shot, to blind the Thessaline long enough to breach. They were not ready, but they never would be, not by the Empire's standards. When the dreadnought arrived, it came not with bluster but gravity. The Thessaline loomed across half the starfield, its hull plated in black gold alloys, engines glowing like captive suns. Around it, escort ships shimmered into formation, tight, clinical, imperial. 30 seconds, Ghostfire intoned. Final authorization required. Rain stood with her hand over the console. She could feel the weight of everything. Earth's ashes, Mila's ghost. The way Dev no longer laughed, Vasa's limp from a plasma wound that had never healed right. Then she pressed her hand down. All hands, she said, voice transmitted through every speaker aboard. Prepare for boarding run. They've forgotten who we are. Let's remind them. The Revenant surged forward, thrusters flaring in defiance. Alarm klaxons rang across both vessels as the smaller ship dove straight toward the Thessalane's bow. Inside the command pit, Dev activated the splice pulse. For 3 seconds, every sensor in the Dreadnought's forward array went dark. And that was enough. The Revenant's breach pods launched like bullets, embedding into the Imperial hull. Explosives tore through bulkheads. The boarding teams poured in, phantoms in rebel gray, striking fast, striking deep. Rain led the first wave. The interior of the Thessalane was a cathedral of efficiency. Clean, gleaming, emotionless. Every corridor looked the same. Every interface was designed for control, not compassion. Rain's blade sparked as it cleaved through the chest plate of a commander who never saw her coming. They pushed toward the command nexus, floor by floor, firefight by firefight. Voss covered their flank with a scatter beam that hissed with red-hot fury. Dev followed close, hands flying over hacked terminals, feeding Ghostfire new data with every second. They're trying to reboot guidance AI, he called out. We've got 6 minutes before the ship regains targeting. Not enough, Voss said, reloading. We'll never reach the core in time. We don't have to, Rain replied. She turned into an auxiliary chamber and activated her comm, all units. New plan. We take the archive. A pause. Then Voss said, You're serious. They think their knowledge is untouchable. Let's make it touchable. Let's show them what a broken truth looks like. They adjusted course. The archive chamber wasn't far, but it was sacred to the Empire. It housed centuries of conquest, a digital mausoleum for cultures they'd absorbed and rewritten. To breach it would be an existential wound. They reached the chamber just as the Dreadnought's AI came back online. Turrets deployed. Shields flared. Voss took a hit to the shoulder, spun out with a scream. Dev got the doors open with 2 seconds to spare. Inside, the chamber was bathed in blue starlight from a synthetic dome. Crystalline data cores rotated in precise silence, each one a story retold in the Empire's language. Rain walked to the center console, removed a small black cube from her coat, and plugged it in. Ghostfire's voice crackled through the speakers. Ready for overwrite. Rain stared at the cores, each one a lie polished into doctrine. Then she nodded. Erase it all. Confirmed. Light flashed. Data shattered. Across the ship, systems crashed. Alarms screamed. And every ship within the sector, Imperial or not, received a signal. It was Rain's voice again, recorded just minutes earlier. This is what Empire looks like when it dies. Across occupied worlds, the signal was replayed again and again. Back aboard the Revenant, the surviving crew returned in waves. Voss was alive, barely. Dev collapsed the moment he unhooked from the splicer. Rain sat beside the main view panel, staring at the drifting wreck of the Thessalane. Its spine broken, its purpose nullified. They hadn't destroyed it. They'd made it irrelevant. 3 days later, in a shattered mining colony on the edge of Orion space, an Empire colonel surrendered without a shot fired. A week after that, the planet Kairos held open elections. By the month's end, 35 independent systems had declared alignment with the Resistance. Not allegiance. Alignment. Rain read the reports without comment. She didn't smile. She didn't sleep. At night, when the others drifted off to their dreams, light or dark, she would walk the hangar bays, listening to the quiet hum of the Revenant systems, watching stars pass by like ghosts, thinking of those who never saw this far. Dev found her there once, 2 mugs of rehydrated tea in hand. He said nothing, just passed her the drink and sat beside her on the cold plating. "They're calling it the Rule 1 revolution now," he said after a while. "Everywhere." Rain nodded. "They'll try to bury it. They've already failed." She turned her head to him, and in that moment, just a flicker, her eyes softened. "We haven't won, Dev. Not yet. But we're here," he said. "Still fighting." She looked back at the stars. "For now," she said. Then, softly, "Let's make it count." And in the silence that followed, the Revenant drifted on, scarred, stubborn, and alive, toward the next horizon.